Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this session of the On the Mark Financial Forum and Podcast. We have a very special guest today, a jack of all trades, but specializing in many, many different versions of senior living. William Young, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd love for our audience to get to know more about you. I think that perspective is important with the things that we'll be talking through. So maybe you could give us a quick introduction of who you are and all the different organizations and endeavors that you're involved in.
Been married for almost 16 years now to my wife, Julie, who's a teacher. Have four kids, 9, 11, and 3.5-year-old twins, which I think the purpose of today's call is parenting. Is that what we're going to be talking about?
Parenting for our parents.
Right, yeah, I know,
The
right?
opposite, yes.
Your kids are a bit older. But
Yeah.
yeah, a family man living in the Tustin area. And professionally, there's quite a bit that I do in the senior living space. The way I like to explain it is I'm on the freeway and I have a few companies that are all in different lanes, but it's the same freeway and it's the same to me. My background 16 years ago started in senior living at the big box facilities. And then where everything changed when I started my first company, and I'm mentioning that so you can kind of see the order of what happened and where my knowledge comes from. About 10 years ago, I opened up my first facility known as a board and care. So it's a residential home where 6 seniors live there 24/7 and we provide care. So I have my home in North Tustin called Forever Young Memory Care. And that was the first, let's say, passion play where I wasn't looking to start a company. I just wanted to be happy. And with my background for 5 of the largest companies that provide senior living on the big box side, I hadn't hit my stride. I wasn't happy. It wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it should be. So opened up my own home, which was a journey in itself. And I'd say about 16, 18 months later, someone had asked me, do you consult? And I thought, yeah, absolutely. I remember I was in my living room at the care home in front of the bird aviary. And I said, yeah, I consult. And they go, absolutely. How do your fees work? And I said, well, let me shoot you an email and share that with you. And I went home and called my
Once I
brother-in-law.
figured out.
Yeah, I was like, oh, exactly what happened. Called my
Right.
brother-in-law who consults and said, what does this look like? And he explained. So I picked up my first client and then that just organically took off. And that was actually a company teaching them how to sell to RCFEs, how to sell their product to board and cares. And then the consulting morphed into teaching homes how to do it better. And when I say homes, it's the residential care homes and operations, sales, branding, or talking people into the industry or out of the industry. Because when I meet someone who wants to get in, it's let's see if really this is the right fit for you. Because it can sound like it's a honeymoon and oh, it's so fantastic revenue wise. No, it's the worst job in the world unless you have a passion for it. At least
Right.
that's my belief.
Well, you pretty much described the lending world as well.
Yeah,
Nutshell, you have to love it.
yes,
Otherwise, it'll beat you up and spit you out.
so true. For me, I guess with your world in lending, I thought, like my buddy who sells insurance, like how rewarding is that? But then the person who helped me, Jennifer, get our forever home, it was everything to us. Like we finally have a home that's ours. And she goes, that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I
It,
realized, oh, I see how purposeful it can be because I will always remember how she helped us get our house. But that practice, Senior Living Savvy, which is the professional consulting practice. And then there's Elder Care Wise, which is the geriatric care consulting. So that's where, for a fee, families contract me to provide a wide range of support and services and at times placement. So I get compensated on both ends. And that came about where my wife was trying to start a tradition of having dinner at the dining table. And I wasn't raised that way, and she wasn't either, but she wanted to do that. And I'd always get phone calls and answer them, go into my kid's room and take the call. And it's kind of like during realtor hours when the adult children want to call and have questions. And it became an issue in our family that I'm always on the phone. And my therapist said to me, why, well, is this a job? And I go, yeah, it's called the geriatric care consultant. And he goes, well, do you charge? And I said, well, no, I didn't go to school for that. And he goes, are you good at it? I said, yeah, I'm really good at it. He goes, then you should charge. So I tried that, and then that practice just organically grew. So I get to help families on that end, which is a unique perspective where when we talk about whatever we're going to talk about today, I wear a hat of the family side and I wear a hat from the operational professional side. And then this is about 6 years ago now that I decided to found the RCFE Association, which in California, I was looking for an organization that supports the residential homes, more of the 6 beds. And I couldn't find one that was helping me become better. So I started that did well in the sense of the members who were joining saw value in what we discussed. And then that turned into doing conferences where every year, this is our 4th year, and it'll be at the Disneyland Convention Center that we were briefly talking about, where it's a conference to bring all the professionals together and talk about the real stuff, like not the vanilla stuff, like really, how do we get better? How do we share our stresses? How do we share what tools we're using that are good and then revamp them to be even better? Because there's enough, talk about it professionally, there's enough business for everyone. We should
Right.
all work together. Um, and yeah, so that's a little bit of what I do professionally.
That's
And
great. Well, like I said, you have so many different perspectives on it, and you deserve every penny of your consulting because you've not only guided other people through it, but you've lived through it. You've done it yourself. So you're not coaching or advising from a theoretical standpoint. It's really like you know what you're talking about.
yeah,
And
thank
kudos
you.
to you for creating the organization. I'd love to hear just briefly a little bit more about it. I mean, I know about it for the sake of the audience. Can you explain for somebody who may not be in the senior living industry, but maybe a family who is thinking about different types of facilities or care that they may need? Can you explain what RCFE stands for and basically what that is?
Yes. So in California, families are most familiar with the term assisted living or memory care. What those are facilities. We can call them communities, we can call them homes, whatever you want. The technical term is a facility, and they're governed by the Department of Social Services. So every state has their own guidelines. In California, the Department of Social Services classifies all these facilities as RCFEs, residential care facilities for the elderly. So it doesn't matter if you have a small residential home like mine, or it's Brookdale Senior Living, the largest in the nation, or Oakmont Senior Living, the largest in California, that are the big properties. We are all RCFEs that have the same license, the same facility license, and the same administrator license. So if you were looking for your family, let's say you're the adult children doing research, the families often think, oh, it's a big community and there's a nurse, they can do more. No, that's not the case at all. They're licensed to provide the same quality of care up until the end of life, and they're a non-medical facility, just like the residential home, but they bring in more money so there can be more bells and whistles. And sometimes the bells and whistles add value, sometimes they don't. And there's a pro and con depending on what that senior is looking for, not just for engagement and quality of life. One could be for the activities of daily living, the support they need with dressing, bathing, redirecting, let's say, or if there's dementia and there's behaviors. And then also cost, because the pricing structure is different on both ends, if it's a big box facility or a residential home. So again, in California, RCFE, it could be assisted living, memory care, a board-in care, residential home, but that's what these facilities are. The other term that's used for young adults in California is ARF, adult residential facilities. So that's where children or youth that have some sort of need where it's not safe for them to live alone, there's that part of the industry as well. And there is a trend right now with folks who own ARFs opening up RCFEs and vice versa.
Right. And I learned recently, this is something that I don't know, maybe should have been more intuitive than it was, but some of these smaller homes, like converted homes that are now care facilities, they're not necessarily only for elderly. They can be for people who are rehabbing or people that have had some major surgery or a stroke or something like that, and they need care, but not on a permanent basis necessarily. Have you seen more of that?
Yeah, I haven't seen more of it, but it does exist. And the traditional term is congregate care. So that is like a skilled nursing facility, but done out of a residential setting. Kind of the whole chain of care. You have the hospital, we know what that is. From there, you have a skilled nursing facility. Skilled nursing facilities also go by nursing home, rehab facility. Our parents or grandparents think, oh, it's a nursing facility. It's a skilled nursing facility. And the only reason that you really should be there is that you have a medical need because insurance is covering it. And then, as what you were just referring to, folks said, hey, you can get a congregate care license to operate that medical setting with IVs and doctors doing rounds in a residential home. So totally different business model. That is federally regulated to where an RCFE is a state. But I know that I want to say profits could be much higher. I'm not, but I know overhead's higher because you have doctors on staff, things of that sort.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of different things to consider if you're in the space and what type of business do you want to operate, and the costs are different to families depending on amenities and things like that. I mean, even in my day-to-day life where we're dealing with clients who are maybe buying condos, it's the same determination. Do you want a building that has a doorman and a pool and all these other amenities, or do you want something that's a little more bare bones?
Yeah.
and there's different solutions for different people.
Yeah. We
So
see the adult children when they have a passion for elders, or they go, mom's going to need care. Maybe they should open up a home or convert mom's home so she could stay there, because the need is absolutely going to grow for the next 15, 20 years. So if people watching this podcast right now are the adult children that are thinking, how the heck are we going to afford this? It's something that they can do as well, because you don't have to do college to do well in this space. You just need to surround yourself with the right people, ask the right questions, not reinvent the wheel, and treat everybody like you love them, like it's your own parents. If you do that and you treat your team the way you want to be treated, or you want your children to be treated in their place of employment, then it's going to work. The money will come, but chase that last. Don't even chase it. Just do what's right.
it's interesting. I'd never thought about converting your own home into some sort of care facility as opposed to having the senior have to move somewhere else where they're probably less comfortable.
Hmm.
And so just in general, with senior living, what sort of trends are you seeing? Are you seeing people lean more towards the larger communities, more towards the residential homes that are converted, or is it kind of a mix? Are you seeing shifting, or is that pretty much, been consistent on an ongoing basis?
The trends have been the same. And the biggest trend right now is there's not enough, for lack of a better word, beds. There are seniors that need this type of support, but the support doesn't exist yet. So there's that huge shortage going on. So what does that mean for the RCFEs? The state right now is approving about 115 to 130 applications a month, which means there's that many RCFEs opening up every single month in California, and there's still a shortage. So professionally, it's a hot industry. For the family side, there's a big need and not enough of opportunity for their loved one to move to a good spot. So we see that growth as a trend. The big trend on the financial side of what's going to help pay for this is referred to as the Assisted Living Waiver Program, or the ALW. Have you heard that term yet, Mark?
Please
Oh,
explain.
so this is huge for the listeners. So when you don't have enough money to pay for care, it used to be mom or grandma's going to live in a skilled nursing facility, that medical setting, because if she's home alone, she's just not safe. She can't cook, she can't take her medicine, she can't get up. It's just not an option anymore. So seniors would live in that medical setting, and that doesn't work. It works where they can be safe and their needs can be met in the sense of dressing, bathing, incontinence care. But the engagement, the stimulation, the quality of life, it's not there in the medical setting. That's what my grandma lived through. And that's where my passion just came. Like, this is wrong. Why don't people see what I see? This is wrong. And it's not that the people didn't care. The system was broken, I felt. So right now, if a senior were to go to that skilled nursing setting, that skilled nursing facility, which is a business, doesn't want them there, and insurance doesn't want them there. Like, there's more money to be made than people trying to private pay or not paying at all. So what has happened is the government put together this program called the Assisted Living Waiver Program. And I have an awesome person for you that you probably want to have on your podcast, the leader in California with that topic. So for your loved one, they can then get approved for this program and then live at an RCFE that accepts we'll call it the ALW. And so one, it's there for low income folks. Laws changed last year to where there's no more income qualifiers. So you can be a millionaire, keep your funds and get on that program, which is not how it was supposed to be, but it happened. And my facility is at this time, it's $10,500 a month. It's all inclusive on pricing. I'm applying to accept that ALW program. And if I accept someone on that ALW program, I will get anywhere between $5,500 and about $7,500 a month. So less that I'm collecting private pay. For certain care homes, their rates are lower than that $5,500 amount, so it's better for them. But the reason that I'm doing it is at some point in the near future, I'm going to have a relative who needs care. And it's got to be my home. This is my family. And so just so I'm able to collect some revenue to keep the business going as it should, I'm applying for that program. But for your listeners, if they think mom's got 50,000 left to her name, or mom is just living off Social Security of 1,800, there's absolutely a light at the end of the tunnel. But with that ALW program, it takes about 2 years right now for a senior to be approved. So really, it's not going to work. Timeline, but it can be expedited, and it's usually expedited to 60 to 90 days. And in order for that to happen, you have to be living at a hospital or a skilled nursing setting for 60 consecutive days, or you can get adult protective services involved or work with a specialty consultant that just does these applications for seniors. But that's something that's been keeping me really busy right now. It's the folks that don't have the funds or the children that are really scared, and realizing you could live at a place on the ALW where the state's paying for it and takes maybe 80% of your Social Security, but then there's also families living there that are paying $8,000 to $10,000 a month cash. So it is a good quality of life and good care. It's just bizarre that families don't know about this, and you really can't Google and figure it out on your own. Keeps me busy, but there's it's, I think one of the reasons you're doing what you're doing, sharing the message that this is literally changing people's lives. I heard you joke in one of your podcasts I was watching that you're like, this could save a life, kind of joking. No, really it can. Because if you can imagine if you were in distress for your parent and you didn't, and I have a gentleman right now. He's moving his mom out from Vegas. He has a baby on the way. He has a 2-year-old. He thinks she's gonna have to live with them. He's stressed about the finances. He's super emotional, but telling him, no, 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 look, there's a wonderful solution. Not only is it good for his mom, but him and his marriage and his kids and his career. And that's what life is about. So the message that you're spreading by bringing folks on your podcast and putting yourself out there, I applaud. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, getting information out there is so critical, and excuse me. And oftentimes we see that people just aren't aware of options. They don't know what exists. I had never heard of this program that you just mentioned, so there you go. I'm an audience member as well as a host, and I learn something new on every session that we do, which is why I absolutely love doing this and interviewing new people all the time. But also they don't know where to go to get the information, because there's, you could Google things and get so much information that you have no idea what to do with any of it. It's so overwhelming. And there's different opinions, and those are obviously aren't presented as opinions online. They're presented as fact, and it just gets so convoluted. It's really hard to try to figure that out. And you're right. You gave the perfect example. The adult families, who usually many times have their own children that they have to prioritize. And now all of a sudden the parents or parent have a medical need that oftentimes they're navigating from somewhere else. They're, they're not always living. It's not like the olden days where, the kids live down the block from the parents. Now people are all over the country. I don't live in the same state as my family, as my parents. So I'm, and I'm of that age where, we're having to start starting to think about all these things. But one of the things that we often hear from families and seniors is, I don't want to sell my home. And because they're going through such an emotional time that you described perfectly, not just for the senior, but for the family that's impacted as well. What sort of trends are you seeing with people as it relates to their home, like where they currently live, if they feel like they either have to sell it or do something else creative, or maybe they're just emotionally tied to it because they're going through such an emotional move into some sort of facility already?
For that population, the house is a good resource if it has equity, but it's not always being sold. There's two things to talk about relating to this. One is, what are they doing with the house? But the other is, what story are they telling their parents? And at the time where a parent is no longer safe to live at home, we see a lot of dementia right now. So it's not a good idea to have that logical conversation of, hey, mom, you're not really safe here anymore, and you're doing these quirky things at night, or even no dementia, but you're not showering, or mom, I noticed you're not cooking, or the food's expired, or mom, you've fallen a few times when we found you on the floor. That mom is going to say, okay, Mark, it's time to move. I understand. Like, sell the house if you need to. No, they don't want to lose their independence at all. So a big part of this is for our families, me being an adult child as well, what approach can we take with mom so she feels that she is in control and this decision is hers? And I can tell you there's absolutely a way of going about it. But when you are the family, you're ineffective because you're family. At the end of the day, you're to mom, you're always Mark. You're my Mark. And you're like, I'm a parent. I handle things. I run a podcast.
No, my mom still thinks, she'll probably listen to this episode and be laughing, but she still thinks I'm 6 years old.
Oh, my mom says, what do you do again for work? And then,
right.
Oh my gosh. And this podcast will be like, you're famous. I'm telling my friends. And I was like, oh, mom, you're so silly.
Not until after this episode airs, then comes the fame and fortune.
Right? Oh, I love it. So it's the seniors for the funds. They either have their resources and they don't need to sell the house, and the kids figure out, do we want to lease it, or do one of us want to move in? I know reverse mortgage doesn't work in this situation because they have to be living there, although from time to time I see that. There's long-term care insurance, which is rare, but that's something that you and I should absolutely consider. I'm in the middle of going through the whole physical process, so because I believe it makes a heck of a lot of sense to get those policies. There's still some great policies out there, But if the adult child, if their parent has the policy, it's digesting it to make sure you know when you can use it. Because it's very common for the insurance companies to shut it down and say, nope, not right now. We're not approving it. And it's because the family's saying the wrong thing or filled out the form incorrectly or
Right.
doesn't know how to leverage the medical professional to get what they need above board, but say, this is what I need you to say because you're not using the words that are in this contract. So, that's an important side of it.
Yeah.
To sell the house, the kids play a big role in that as well. What's their agenda? And for my geriatric care consulting, kids' agendas always aren't, let's say, in their loved one's best interest, or there's times where the kids need the funds and they're hoping on that house to provide for their family because they're not in the best situation. If a senior has a house and needs to use it for the care, then hopefully there's a child involved that can help execute and make that happen. But there's so much more to it than just the logistics of selling the house, getting the money that you need, and then paying for the care. There's the emotional side of what are we going to say to mom or dad so they feel comfortable during this process. And comfortable is best case scenario. It's that's where families struggle the most and aren't aware that there are a few people out there that can support their parent to where they feel that it is their decision. And that's what I find most rewarding, because when I did this with my grandma in a mobile home in Murrieta Hot Springs in Southern California, where I was like, Grandma, you can't stay here. And
Yeah.
she's like, all she heard is me taking away her independence, and I'm crying and I'm emotional. But now I can do that all day long with any family member. And I think when you come from a place of love and you're authentic and they know that you genuinely care, that energy helps make it real effective.
It does. Yeah, and the financial side is not just financial, it's emotional, especially when it comes to the home. And the generation that's aging now is one that on average has lived in their house for 30, 40, 50 years. It's
Yeah.
not like the generation that maybe you or I come from or our kids will come from where they're used to moving around more often and they don't get maybe quite as attached to the homes. But
Yeah.
like, they raise their kids in this house and their grandkids and they have all these great memories that they're really trying to hold on to. And that's where we try to provide some value is in being able to give them an option to maybe finance the home and to pay for care. And if they're renting it, there's loans that allow us to help them qualify based on the rental income
Mhm.
rather than traditional income. Because that's the biggest problem for seniors is two things. Either they don't meet traditional lending criteria because lenders nowadays are very much driven by income, not so much by everything else, or they don't have the mental capacity to sign. And that creates some other challenges with being able to get title insurance and other things that lenders are going to require. So that's where our expertise comes in is working with the family, understanding the emotional side of what they're doing. And you put it very well, the adult children, their interests are not always aligned with just helping the senior because they're fast forwarding time to say, well, when the senior's not around, I want the proceeds from selling or I want to move in or I want, there's a
Or I don't want to move out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. They may already be there, and that's
Yeah.
not at all uncommon either. But they don't have the potentially, if they're living with mom, they potentially don't have the financial means to actually
Yeah.
qualify to stay there. So those
So
types
are
of
there loans or so for a senior who's living at home and everyone's on board with moving to a care environment, they can refinance their home? Is that something that you're able to help them with?
Yes, that's exactly what we do is try to help people be able to keep their homes so they don't feel like they're forced to leave. And that could be lots of different forms. It could be if they need short-term financing just to get through that transition, it could be a bridge loan. They want to keep it long-term. Maybe they choose home care, for example, right? Where a reverse mortgage would be an option, but
Yeah.
there's some downsides to reverse mortgages as well. If they want to easily pass the property on to their heirs or something like that, or they decide they can't live at home and they need to move into a facility, you kind of
Mhm.
alluded to the fact that in order to have a reverse mortgage, you have to be living in the home. And there's some other issues. My biggest personal pet peeve with reverse mortgages is that you lose equity on a compounding basis. So it's kind of the opposite of if you have an investment account and it's compounding in your favor. So the
Mhm.
longer you hold it, you're doing gains on top of gains on top of gains. With a reverse mortgage, because you're not making a payment, what's happening is you're adding interest to the balance every month and then you're paying interest on interest on interest on interest. So you're losing equity at an accelerated basis the longer you hold that loan. And usually they're a little bit limiting as far as the percentage of leverage that you can get on the home because the property value might theoretically change. I mean, it makes sense why they do that. If you're
Yeah.
looking at potentially staying in that home for another 10, 20 years, who knows where property values will go. So you can't over leverage it. So there's pluses and minuses. Every family is going to be in a different situation where a reverse mortgage might be the right fit. But I think most people don't know, and this is where we get the education out there of what we do, is that there are other ways to do it where maybe you pull out, for example, a lump sum of money and then the family invests that with a financial advisor. So now not only are you not having to sell and incur the capital gains tax, which is a big deal that people underestimate significantly, but now you have money in an investment account that will grow over time and help you pay for the care. And if you decide that the senior can't live there anymore, and let's just say you don't have an adult child who's living in the house, and they decide to rent it, the beauty of that scenario, and it's not right for everybody, and definitely probably want to hire a property manager to help you deal with that because you don't want, mom and dad getting a call in the middle of the night that, a pipe burst. That's not a viable option. So property management is definitely part of this. But there are loans that are just based on the cash flow of the rental income relative to the expenses. So it takes out the whole issue of seniors not having enough income to qualify. So there's some
So
really creative things that we can do.
this is helpful for me to know. I imagine if there's a lot of equity in the house, it's kind of a slam dunk. We can have a good solution for you. What are the situations where it's really an unfortunate situation and there's not a product to help that senior who has a house?
So some of these programs are better used when the senior is actually not living there. And this is why reverse mortgage sometimes plays into being the right solution, depending on whether the senior's there and again, depending on their mental capacity to sign. So let's just say they don't have a family member who has power of attorney. Maybe they didn't set up all these arrangements with an estate attorney ahead of time, power of attorney, trust, all these different things. So you can run into situations where there's nobody that's legally assigned to sign on their behalf, and they don't have the mental capacity to sign on their own. Those are
And
the
when you come
difficult.
across that, what do you do?
That's where you get a little bit stuck. And usually hopefully there's some sort of maybe court appointed person who's taking care of their financials or a fiduciary or something like that, where there may be options to be able to finance, but it's going to be less attractive financing because there's no real underwriting of anything other than just the value of the home.
Yeah.
So as you get more complicated, the terms for the loans get worse, and then you got to decide if it's worth it or not. Any of these situations, it's a cost benefit analysis. But with some of these programs that are, not traditional underwriting where they're looking at whether mom and dad are still earning a salary, which obviously they're not, and the Social Security itself is not enough to pay for care, and they're potentially not going to live in the home anymore. So now they have to qualify to carry the cost of the care and whatever it costs them to keep the home. That's making it even harder. So some of these programs are really helpful. They're based on assets, they're based on rental income. There's like it's not a one size fits all type of product. It's really flexible in having different ways to underwrite a loan. And there are some that just don't have any requirement for employment or income to be disclosed on a loan application where they can pull out equity that way. So there's lots of different ways. And that's our job, is to, when we get a scenario from a family or, a senior or adult children or a combination of them, is to help them figure out, okay, how close can we get to that center lane of underwriting where the rates are as, market standard rates? How far do we have to deviate from that in order to get the loan actually approved? Because it's great to talk about all these solutions, but if you don't have the creative underwriting, it's going to apply to a fraction of the people. And the other thing we find is that a lot of times the adult children don't want to co-sign on loans if they don't have to, because then they're worried about how it may impact their ability to buy their next home. And there's workarounds for that as well, but that's a common conversation that we have with people. So that's partly the message we're trying to get out, is that there are alternatives, first of all, to selling the home. There are alternatives to, a reverse mortgage, because I think a lot of times people just naturally think it's a senior, they need a reverse mortgage without any discussion of other alternatives. But that's our job, is to get the word out there to people, in the senior living industry and to families in general about all these different options that we can potentially provide as a solution to be able to keep that home if they want to, or
Mhm.
if they want to stay in the home, to be able to provide a way to access the equity in the homes. And right now, you have people who have owned houses for so long that the amount of equity they built up in these homes can be tremendous. And
Yeah.
oftentimes they're free and clear. So there's a lot of equity to pull on, but families often have this weird approach to using the home as an investment as opposed to liquidating, an IRA or some other
Mhm.
type of investment or cash. It's just two different types of investments. Just one has more of an emotional attachment than other.
Yeah. I think if me personally, if you're able to keep the house, if my family's able to keep the house, absolutely. Like we're in
Yes.
Southern California. It just
Right.
keep your home. And when I went to start my business in the first care home, we sold this beautiful townhouse we had in Anaheim Hills, and I wanted to keep it so bad. One for sentimental, but two, it's just an awesome home. But it would have put margins too thin, and we'd never been a landlord, and we thought, well, if it stays occupied always and we get this amount, we'll be okay. And then I learned from others, no, it doesn't work that way. There'll be new tenants, there'll be things to repair. You mentioned the senior not having capacity. And I come
Yes.
across that as quite a bit. And I have a client right now where she's living at home within home care. Everything's set up, but she just inherited a house from a relative who passed away. And they want to sell that house, but they need her to sign off on it. And they haven't been in a position yet where they would need to get not the conservatorship, but the power of attorney activated. So for anybody who's listening, if your parent does not have someone assigned as a power of attorney, it is so worth doing right now, because at the point where they can't make that decision, that's when you need to get a conservator, and you have to pay a lot of money for that. And if there's an emergency, you're trying to get an attorney to file for an ex parte at the courts to get it rushed, and you lose control and things fall apart. Something that's important to know is when you're power of attorney, you're not financially on the hook for your parents. So if they have a bunch of debt or something bad happens financially, it personally is not affecting you at all. Your responsibility as a POA is to make the decisions in their best interest with the resources they have. So it's always great to have one POA. If you want to split it up, give one medical, one financial, but don't say, hey, kids, you both can all have control the finances equally, because it makes things fall apart.
Or when you have an informal understanding between the family members, but you don't formalize it in any legal document, if the senior loses capacity, who's to say that that's actually what was agreed upon if there's no written agreement? I mean, I'm not an attorney. Maybe that's binding in some jurisdictions, but it's hard to prove.
Yeah.
And usually then you have to get lawyers involved, and that usually, pulls more money out of
Hmm.
whatever the senior has to pay for care. And the planning ahead is so critical. I mean, I'm 46 and I have those things in place, like, because who knows, in this day and age, anything could happen any day. You're thankful that you have every day that you have. But especially as a senior, if you don't have an estate plan, if you don't have all these things, first of all, you're probably missing out big time on tax planning, which is a
Hmm.
huge deal. But also, when capacity becomes more limited and you have to help with those decisions, the professionals that are trying to support your parent or parents don't
Hmm.
have the authority to take your direction. And that's a big deal.
And it happens during time of crisis.
Yes.
And then it's like, okay, we need the bank to give us the money or put us on the account so we can pay for what she needs. Nope, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's being prepared. And it's not something that a family usually does unless they've experienced or had a friend experience, oh no, how bad it can be. And it's, just like you and I'm going to be 46 next month. And it's crazy because you said your kids are in their 20s or 30s.
I got married young.
My oldest is 11. I know what I'm going to do to make it easier for my kids with the trust and just everything having it dialed in. Because when our parents think, I'll let you make the decisions, I don't care, that's causing the burden. If
Yes.
they would help with the decisions now and decisions that we don't have to execute, I just want to know your wishes. And if you come across a situation where you need that conservatorship or letters from physicians saying they're not in capacity, so that you can invoke the power or the POA paperwork. It's not difficult to get to have a mobile physician come and take care of it for the family member. It can all be done within a day or two. But again, families don't know that, and they wait for the primary physician to try to get an appointment to bring mom in, which is a hassle in itself at that point. But it's kind of for you, mortgages. and loans are so for me. And I had people trying to give me advice, I'm a pretty smart guy, but for that area, I don't want to figure it out, and it is too much for me. I just knew when I bought my house, just tell me how much I'm gonna have to pay each month. That's all
Right.
I care about. I want this house.
Right.
Tell me how. And they're like, well, it's not the best loan for you. Just tell me. And I'm sharing that because when families have no idea what to do to solve for their loved one's safety, to me, it's like, oh, it's not that difficult. You do it
Right.
all day long. So it's just surrounding yourself with the right people. And I want to say, like, what's more important? It's family. And we're not selling cars here. That transparency and that honesty, going off Google reviews, so
I'm
far.
sure those could be fabricated
Oh,
some.
it happens it happens.
I'm sure. But yeah, I think the key here is really just planning ahead and hiring the estate attorney early on, getting your affairs ironed out because like you said, even though the senior may have said, "Yeah, we want you to just handle everything," but then what? What do you do with that? What
Hmm.
about well, wait, no, I knew mom was really particular about this, about her home or about her car or whatever it is. She had an emotional attachment. So I don't want to have to make those decisions. So
Yeah.
planning ahead puts your family in a position where they don't have to make those difficult decisions for you. And in a time of crisis or a senior passing, that's really critical. And I think one other area that people don't focus on enough is the tax planning. And we talk about this a lot, the step up in basis with taxes. So if you bought your home for $100,000 and now it's worth, let's say it's in a really expensive area, it's worth a few million now
Mhm.
over that 40-year period that you owned it. If you sell it the day before you pass, you're paying capital gains on pretty much that whole gain. If your family can hold on to it, maybe they take out financing, maybe they rent the home for a while to be able to buy more time. Once the senior passes, the value of the home that you technically, quote unquote, acquired the property for gets this step up in basis, which means it's now based on the date of death. So all that capital gains tax gets erased. We had a situation recently with a 97-year-old woman who, unfortunately, we heard about this after the fact, who had sold her home and probably paid $1 million in capital gains tax
Wow.
unnecessarily that the family could have used to do something with afterwards if they had just bought time. So there's the beauty of education and why we do
Hmm.
what we do, because we never want that to happen.
Yeah.
Listen, I pay my taxes. The IRS serves a purpose, but we don't
Yeah.
want people making decisions because they're not having proper advice or information where they could have made a better decision for their family and left more of a legacy. Because I think as seniors, that's, when I'm a senior, that's what I want to do. I buy real estate investing. It helps my family now, but it's also like a legacy thing. Like I want to be able to leave properties to my kids to live off of and to benefit from, just like my
Yeah.
grandfather did. Anyway, that's a story for another time.
Was your grandfather from California?
No, no, I grew up in Seattle.
Okay.
So yeah, but he was like an immigrant from way away, from far
Yeah.
away, and came to the country with nothing and somehow bought two properties that are still in the family that are now benefiting family members. He died 30 years ago, still benefiting family members that he never met. I'm just like, that's such a beautiful thing to me. Like the beauty of real
Yeah.
estate, like gives you chills. So that's the kind of legacy that I want to create for my family because I can tell you're very, very much a family man and I'm the same way. And if people just take care of other people, like good things can happen and they can navigate these really
Yeah.
difficult decisions. Just getting them in the right hands with the right advice is really, really critical.
Yeah. It's a story gives me the chills, like with your grandparents, both of my grandparents, immigrants, Poland and Germany, and landed in New York, and they hustled and made some decisions that ended up being beneficial, and it's helped us all. And I know I talk to my neighbors who are they're our age, and I'm like, how are kids going to buy houses in this area, like in Orange County? Like, how are they? They're how everything is over $1 million. It's crazy. And so the idea is, we'll buy a house and keep it and let it be our kids' house, so they can live near us come due time.
Real
Well,
estate.
every podcast I listen to about how to protect your wealth or retire, it's all buy property.
Well, if you look at the vast majority of people that have developed a lot of wealth, a big chunk of it is through real estate, in some
Yeah.
capacity. But that's a podcast for another time. We have a whole other series about creating a side hustle in real estate. That's another part of my business outside of seniors.
Yeah.
But I want to wrap up today's session. I always ask this question at the end of each session that we do is that, and I have a feeling I'll be able to guess what you might say, but if there was one thing that you could have people take away either from the session today or just seeing what you see every day in senior living? What's one thing you're just like, God, I wish everyone knew blank or did blank?
I wish everyone knew that they're going to be okay and that kindness wins. And if you ask for help, there's someone that's willing to help you or that knows someone who can help you. And if anybody is listening to this, which are, that have something going on with their parents, that's heavy. That's the one thing that for you and me, that will derail everything. If there's a major issue with our parents or our immediate family, like this, what you and me are doing, it's gone. It's like this is the real life stuff. And so there are people out there that even pro bono or just can put you in the right direction. People can take care of people, and there's resources out there. And just like you're providing solutions on the real estate side, there's support just with how to process this internally as the adult child and how to best be there for your parents. But to me, more importantly, how to be there for yourself, because you got to take care of yourself. Have you ever heard of the oxygen mask analogy?
No, I'm
So
curious.
when you're on an airplane, and if that airplane is going down and you have all your kids next to you, and let's say your grandkids when you have them, what do they tell you? You put that oxygen mask on yourself first. You don't put it on your 2-year-old. You don't put it on your wife. You put it on yourself. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't help anyone else. And for people that like to provide and help others and always say yes, intentionally it makes sense, but you're really doing a disservice. So I get to see so many adult children that are struggling and it affecting their marriage and their career because they don't want to move their parent. And it's kind of giving them permission to ask for help, and it will absolutely be okay. There is a light at the end of this tunnel. I've been doing it for too long to know that this is real stuff and it takes a community. So with what you're doing and educating me today, it's another notch on my black belt to tell families, here's a solution with the real estate and with the trusted person who's putting themselves out there who values family. So it'll be okay.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice. You understand so much of the emotional side of this, which sometimes gets lost in the business transaction
Hmm.
at hand or the trying to increase occupancy at a facility and all these things, even though those people are obviously well-meaning as well. But there is such an emotional side to this that you're right. Nothing else matters when you're dealing with a crisis with a family member, if
No,
and you'll miss them when they're gone. So take good care of them while they're here. Awesome. Well, William,
absolutely.
thank you so much. This is a really enjoyable conversation for me. Like I said, I always learn from these sessions. I hope the audience will pick up something new. I hope maybe you picked up something new, and we're all better for it. So this is why we love doing this. So thank you so much for being our guest
Absolutely.
today. And we would love to have you back again. I'm sure there will be lots and lots of stuff to talk about, and I hope to see you at the conference in August and
Yes.
maybe get a trip into Disneyland, even though my kids are probably too old for it. But would
Like
love
that.
to get to see you in person and see you shine and do what you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for putting this together and putting it out there and helping everyone.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. This is what we love doing. So helping people make better decisions. That's our mission. So but thank you again to the audience for joining us for this session of the On the Mark Financial Forum and Podcast. And we will see you next time. Take care.
Take care.